The big story I wanted to talk about today was PayPal. Now, this is not a distinctly Canadian story, but it very much has a Canadian tie-in that I want to share with you here. And if you missed it, what happened is a few days ago, PayPal said it was going to impose a fine system where its users, so people that sign up to use PayPal, which is this private payment transfer service, it was going to fine them $2,500 if they engaged in what PayPal determined was misinformation. And they said also other things there like hate speech and hate and all of that. And if you read the actual policy here, it was an update to the user agreement that said any violation would result in liquidated damages of $2,500 taken from your account, and offending behaviors triggering this would be anything that involves the sending, posting, or publication of any messages, content, or materials that in PayPal's sole discretion promote misinformation. So if I post something on my Twitter account, PayPal could say, we're taking $2,500 from your PayPal account. And that's even, by the way, saying that it is, in fact, misinformation, which, as we know, is just absolutely fraught these days, and it's one of the most loaded, politicized terms, to say something is misinformation. And this is why it's so insidious, and I'll talk about the Canadian political context here in a moment, but PayPal did this, and instantly there's just this massive wave of people canceling their PayPal accounts, closing their PayPal accounts. I have a dormant PayPal account, which I suppose I should log on and close myself. I don't have $2,500 in there for them to take away. But now I'm wondering if I could start incurring PayPal debt if they just go around and say, oh yeah, this guy, he's been misinforming. So I'm going to log in and find I have minus $12,500 in my PayPal account. So they've backtracked on this and they've said, well, okay, yeah, no, this was misinformation. We didn't mean to. It was accidental. It was nothing to see here. So they've actually said that the policy itself didn't exist. They've said there was no policy. It was an accident. So they're not admitting that they got caught. And I could only assume the reason they're not admitting that is because then they would have to fine themselves $2,500 for misinformation if that was... I guess actually, no, they'll have to fine themselves anyway. Because no matter which way you slice it, this is misinformation on PayPal's part. But it is an example of a company that's being shamed into doing the right thing. But I also think there's a tremendous point here where no one should, at this stage, trust PayPal. Because PayPal has already said it does not value free speech. And one of the very founders of PayPal tweeted about this. He said, this is very difficult to see for a company that he helped build go down this road. And, I understand that wholeheartedly. But I want to bring it into the Canadian political context here, because one thing that we saw earlier this year in the course of the truckers' convoy was how going after people's finances was seen as the silver bullet to going after people themselves. It's called financial deplatforming. And whatever my libertarian bona fides tell me about big tech censorship, which is that it's a terrible thing and something that we should resist in culture, but I'm leery to find a government regulation that solves this problem because, you as an individual consumer make a decision to have a Facebook account, have a Twitter account, and so on. And we can debate and discuss this, but when we're talking about financial services, and PayPal is a financial service. It's one that you engage with voluntarily, but it's also voluntary in the sense that you may choose to have a TD account or choose to have a CIBC account, but you can't choose to have no banking in this day and age. You can't choose to have no bank account. So financial services are one of those core things that you cannot function in this society without. So when all of a sudden your financial service providers are telling you, you know what, we're going to go after you politically. And if you don't believe they will, just take a look at what happened last week to Toby Young. Now, Toby Young is a free speech champion in the United Kingdom. He is the founder of the Daily Skeptic of the Free Speech Union. And PayPal had suspended his account for basically no legitimate reason. And again, they eventually backtracked on this. But how can you ever return from that? If once you know that PayPal has you in its crosshairs and that the very lifeblood of your business or perhaps even your personal finances could be in those crosshairs as well, how could you ever go back to normal? And this is the problem I have when government gets into bed with big tech. And this is precisely what's happening in Canada with Bill C-11. It's what's happening with the attempts by the Liberal government to regulate misinformation and hate speech and to force social media companies to basically be subservient to the whims of government on these things. Remember, government wants to just put this malign alliance in place between itself and tech platforms so that if governments say something is hate speech, the tech companies have to delete it. And it's not a big leap to get from there to misinformation, where again, if the government says something is misinformation, a social media company will have to take it off its platform. And all of this is part and parcel of a trend we're seeing, which is just completely wholesale deplatforming. Completely trying to purge people's digital existence. And doing this in a way that makes it so that the government has the sole authority on whether you get to have a voice or not. And when you talk about these things, it sounds inherently conspiratorial. It sounds like I'm talking about Justin Trudeau sitting in a room saying, well, you know, I don't like that Andrew guy. I'm going to press the button. And then it's like, you know, the old Austin Powers movies where just the floor opens up behind him and just I fall through into the pit of water where the sharks are swirling around and stuff like that. Again, I mean, that's not exactly the power we're talking about here. But we are talking about a government that's trying to make itself all-powerful when it comes to who can publish things online.